Transition. And we'll give ourselves a few seconds to let everybody catch up with us. And I will welcome everyone to the first 11s at Worldbuilders. This is a broadcast we'll do every day during our fundraiser, which is going wonderfully. You can see down there below, there's a link if you feel like suddenly giving. And you have a chance to win prizes. For every $10 you donate, your name gets put into prize draw. We also have an auction. We also have videos on our YouTube channel that are just kind of acts of whimsy and delight. And I am so honored to have our first panel, spooling up our hope engines. And we have a wonderful group, and I'm going to read their bios, and then I'm going to shut up so we can listen to them speak their wisdom. So first of all, Vida Cruz. Vida Cruz is a Filipino fantasy and science fiction writer, editor, artist, and tarot reader. Her short fiction has been published or is forthcoming from Strange Horizons, Podcastle, Expanded Horizons, and various anthologies. She is a 2018 Tiptree Fellow, and in 2019, she published her first fantasy short story collection, Beyond the Line of Trees. Currently, she's a freelance book editor with The Darling Axe. And I also want to say Vida was a wonderful consultant for our putting together these panels for this particular fundraiser. So anything we do right, it's because of what she did or told us, and anything we do wrong is our own fault. And then right there in our screen right below her is Nghi. Nghi was born in central Illinois, and she retains a healthy respect of and love for corn mazes, scarecrows, and 50-year floods. These days, she lives on the shores of Lake Michigan, which is less a lake than an inland sea that she is sure is just biding its time. Nghi became a writer because while there were alternatives, none of them suited her as well as a lifestyle of endless research combined with simply making it up when nothing else would serve. She is the author of The Chosen and the Beautiful, and the Singing Hills cycle, which includes The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. Next to Nghi, we have SB Divya. Divya, you prefer that I just say Divya, correct? Yes. SB Divya is a lover of science, math, fiction, and the Oxford comma. She is the Hugo and Nebula nominated author of Runtime and co-editor of Escape Pod with Mur Lafferty. Her short stories have been published in various magazines, and her debut novel, Machine Hood, is forthcoming from Saga Press in March 2021. She holds degrees in computational neuroscience and signal processing. And last but definitely not least, Nandi Taylor. Nandi is a writer of Afro-Caribbean descent based in Toronto, one of my favorite cities. She has a journalism degree from the University of Toronto and draws on her background as a travel writer to paint immersive fantasy worlds with words. Common themes she writes about are growth, courage, and finding one's place in the world, which is one of the reasons why you are so eminently suited for this particular panel. Thank you. And I just realized that I did not bother to check sound for everybody else. So let me make sure. Can I make sure that everybody can hear us in the chat? Can you all say hi?
I'll go first. Hi. I'm
There we
Divya.
go. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
All right.
Hey.
I'm hoping
There we go.
everybody
Hello.
heard that intro. Otherwise, we'll just have to play it again later on. I know it was recorded, but hopefully everybody heard. Yes, they were able to hear everyone.
Yes,
Excellent.
good.
Whew, that's good. So the idea is spooling up our hope engines, and it has been a year. It has been such a year that we skipped Black Friday and decided to call it the dumpster fire sale. So the first question I have for you as a panel is, how do we differentiate between hope and I don't want to downgrade affirmations, but affirmations is sort of like, there's an aspect of sort of fake hope, of things that don't really help. You'll say, oh, I'm sure things will get better, or something along those lines. What are the things that we can use that are actually, I don't want to say true hope, but that authentic? What defines hope in a time like this?
I tend to look to the past when I'm crafting the future. And I see there's always patterns that seem to repeat in human behavior and human history. And that's actually where I tend to find hope. I know some people look at the past and despair, but I actually feel like when I look back on things that have happened before, we've come through so many great challenges. We've overcome a lot as humanity. Um, there's always been tragedy, but then it's often followed by triumph. So that's kind of what I've done to keep my hope engines alive in 2020 is kind of look at previous pandemics, previous political crises, how did we get through it? What did we do? And generally try to find those stories where people pull together in order to pull through. And that's the thing that often gives me hope.
For me, a lot of times it's having a plan. The things that separate actual hope from something that's a little bit more like empty calories, it'll be okay, always a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the affirmations are functional and they can sort of buoy you up for a little bit. But I think that, especially coming from a background working with nonprofits and volunteer organizations, the key is specifically to have a plan to make it better. Like even if it's a small plan, even if it's a short-term plan, because my ability and the ability of all of my friends to see the future gets truncated the worse things get. So even if it's a plan to get to the next hour, the next day, what have you, a plan is basically, I think, how one way to get authentic hope.
I'd say that that's a very good point. Having a plan is definitely something that helps soothe my anxiety. But I find hope in talking to other people. When you get into this kind of hopeless mindset, it can be very easy to shrink into yourself and isolate. And that's the worst thing you can do, I think. It really that kind of hopelessness thrives on you dwelling and being alone with it. And I feel like talking to friends and seeing that other people are going through a similar emotional journey and have a similar mindset kind of makes me feel better and makes me feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Maybe there is something that we can do about this together. And even just that act of talking it out can help stop the spiral and kind of dissipate that hopeless feeling and give me the boost I need to kind of climb out of that rut.
I'm gonna get philosophical for a bit and talk about Gabriel Marcel discussing hope. And so I'm gonna read that quote of his. A really alive person is not merely someone who has a taste for life, but somebody who spreads that taste, showering it, as it were, around him. And a person who is really alive in this way has, quite apart from any tangible achievements of theirs, something essentially creative about them. And I think that what everyone has said before me kind of encapsulates that, is already practical examples of that. But I want to add that this pandemic, people have been really kind to me, even though we haven't seen each other in a long time. Like when there was a shortage of toilet paper at the beginning, there was also a shortage of sanitary napkins, and I complained about it, and suddenly my friend just sent some to me, no questions asked. It was free. Later on, she also sent me some of her plant cuttings because they were taking up her garden and I wanted to plant them. And speaking of planting, because everyone has been so nice to me, it makes me want to pay it forward. And that, I think, is an authentic way of hoping, as opposed to perhaps optimism, which is I hope that X or I fear that X. Hope is just actively hoping and then giving that hope or inspiring that hope in other people. And if I did not make sense, I'm really sorry.
No, that makes total sense.
Yep. I agree, because it's like going back to what I was saying. When you're surrounding yourself with other people, And we've all heard this quote that, you become the people that you hang around with most, or whatever. So when you surround yourself with people who have somehow found a way to hold on to this sense of hopefulness, yeah, that can absolutely help you, almost like them reaching a hand down to grab you and help you up and bring you out of that hopeless spiral.
I really like the idea of hope as a practice, both the emotion of actually doing it and a muscle you exercise, and also something that you can get into as a repeatable rather than just a sort of a state of mind. I like that. That's good.
And I was also thinking very literally about planting things in the garden as an act of hope, because you are investing in the future, right? That's an act of tomorrow will come. Otherwise, why would I do this, right? And similar sorts of little things, kind of along Nghi's idea of having a plan, is like the execution of said plan, right? When you take actions that won't pay off immediately, but will pay off in a few months, that those feel like acts of hope.
Also a willingness to risk. It's interesting that you brought up plants, because I just moved to a new place. I just got a bunch of new plants, and I'm not good at plants. I'm genuinely bad at this.
Me too.
And it's a hope of having a green thing delivered to my house and me saying, okay, I can probably make you live. I've checked the odds. I've looked this. The odds are better than not. I mean, we're not at 100%. We might not even be at 90. But I think hope is also maybe taking that risk of saying 80% chance I'm not going to have a lump of rotting plant matter in 2 weeks, and going all right. Let's put it that way.
I also find that
sorry,
having I have an 11-year-old, and having a child in the middle of this who understands just enough of the world to be bothered by the situation, right? And to be frustrated and to be lonely, but also to understand why we need to stay home and why we need to stay safe, has kind of forced me to stay hopeful with her, in that, I have to be the one to be like, okay, I have decades on your life. And yes, 6 months sounds like eternity when you're 11. And it kind of is, because, it's a good chunk of your life at that point. But next year at this time, we're going to be through this. We're going to look at things very differently. We're going to get to hang out with our friends again, and kind of maintain a half optimism, but also just concrete things to kind of point to her and say that these are things we're going to be able to do, and places we'll be able to be, and people will be able to see again. And it kind of forces me to come out of that rut that Nandi was talking about. Like, even when I kind of want to just crawl into a hole, it's like, okay, well, for the sake of my kid, I have to at least,
that's good motivation.
And speaking from a mental health perspective, I'm actually diagnosed with major depressive disorder years before this pandemic thing. And I've been through what I like to term as a second puberty, because it's been a really rough few years for me. So but without knowing it, and sometimes knowing it but finding no hope in it, I have been planting the things that are keeping me hopeful today. So when the pandemic hit, it's partially because, I've actually been traumatized before, so I'm maybe in crisis mode right now. So I have my bad days, but I'm not as weighed down as everyone else most of the time. And that is hope coming to fruition, I guess. And I would like to pass that on to everybody else I meet when I can.
It feels like there's kind of this thread of hope as lived experience as well with kids and with mental illness. It's on. I'm not saying that this stuff makes us stronger, because it absolutely doesn't. I think it shows a lot of terrible cracks and stuff like that. But it is kind of like this terrible, wait, I've been here before and I've done stuff this terrible before. We can do this, or I know how to get through this. And I mean, I try to be a good planner, and like I said, from my previous site, I try, but a lot of it is just sort of like getting through it day by day and sort of like swinging from branch to branch and hoping there's another one that you're going to be able to catch. And if not knowing that, then acting as if you do, maybe.
Say to someone who, um, like, there is some benefit to, sort of the authenticity of saying, yeah, things suck. I'm not hopeful. I am not feeling that hopeful right then. I don't feel like you're saying that those people should stay away from them because they're not hopeful. But how do you make a space for that kind of experience when you are trying to spool up your own hope engines?
I'd say
I
it's a
think it's
balancing act. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say it's a balancing act because this hope is, I think, also about setting boundaries for yourself and for other people. Because, well, if you could help other people, but you also have to help yourself first, like
Yeah.
the whole oxygen mask, yours
Mm-hmm.
first before helping someone else. And um, like, I don't know, not a lot of us are taught this at home or anywhere, but we need to learn how to set emotional boundaries between us and even the people we love. So, for example, whenever one of my friends says that they're having a bad day, I just let them rant versus this may be too much information, but then recently in my friend group, we had somebody who is not there anymore because due to some mental health issues and breaking up with the girlfriend in a really bad way and being in a really crappy situation overall, he is, well, he's basically out. And normally I would be more empathetic of somebody who had mental health issues, but mental health issues do not mean that you treat people in a crappy way.
Mhm.
So that's something of what I mean about boundaries. And it's a nuance to every situation.
Yeah, I completely, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, especially this year, because this we're not meant to live like this, like with this constant anxiety in the background, this anxiety buzz, and it's really taking a toll on everyone around me, as I'm sure it is for you all as well. And I've just been kind of ruminating on how do you set that boundary between what is just someone going through a rough time and maybe lashing out versus actual abuse. And there's no reason any of us should be, accepting abuse because maybe somebody is having, you can't, basically, like you said, you can't blame mental illness for your abusive actions towards someone else. Um, and I think that it's just really looking at someone's also pattern of behavior as well, because mental illness might cause someone to lash out temporarily or once, and they may come back and apologize and make recompense and try to modify their behavior and do something to atone for what they've done. That's fine, right? But if it's a pattern and they're not showing remorse, that's really someone that you shouldn't feel guilty cutting off for your own mental health, I think.
Mm.
And it's very hard to hold on to hope and foster your own little, flame of hope that might be guttering out when someone else is constantly kicking sand on it. So there's no reason that you need to keep that person around.
I
Yeah, I
think
was
it's
gonna
important. Oh,
say,
go ahead. Yeah.
that it's, if someone comes to me and says they're having a tough time, I think it's right and good to validate and acknowledge that this is tough, right? That you can't, as I think Gray was saying before we started, you can't Pollyanna your way out of this and just kind of
Mm-mm.
say, well, it's all going to be fine, don't worry about it, just put it aside, right? I think we have to make space for those anxieties. But as Vida and Nandi are kind of saying, I also agree that putting on your oxygen mask first is critical because you can't help someone else if you are that person who's going to everyone saying you're having a tough time, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others.
I think there's something to be said about the fact that hope needs space, and you define and defend your space with boundaries. As Nandi was saying, if you don't have the space and the energy to encourage that to grow, you're screwed. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with in terms of, we want to help other people. You're right, we're not meant to live like this. I feel genuine that people want to live in a place where, and this is possibly once again a little Pollyannish, but I think we genuinely do want to help each other. It's just that we're all very confused about what form that should take. I've definitely had that misunderstanding come up. It's like, no, that's actually the opposite of good for me, but thank you. I see your heart's doing something, But in terms of fostering that space, and in terms of making sure that you have it, and in terms of people who get in the way of that, I think at some point, it's far from letting them put out my fire, they will just become fuel for it. It's getting rid of them. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just had this image of chucking somebody into a
Yes. Oh, come on. Do you think there's no one that it's like, no, you're fuel now. This is fuel. And we're artists, we're writers. This is it. This is the deal. It's, you will help me grow one way or another. Will either help me pick up some wood for this, or you're going in the freaking stove, all right? A weird turn. I've been watching a lot of Hannibal.
I guess that explains it.
It does. Explains too much, frankly.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about self-care as an act of hope in its own way, right?
Yep.
You have to find the things that bring you joy, that bring you peace. Whatever those things are, it's different for everyone, like whether it's solitude, whether it's connecting with other people, whether it's wine, though maybe not too much wine, exercise. I know for me, unlike a lot of other writers this year who were struggling to find their creative space and to, stay quote unquote productive, I happened to be writing a thing that was very kind of far future and fantastical and outside the stuff that I've been doing recently. And that ended up really being a refuge for me because it was away from reality, and science fiction and fantasy have always been sort of my escape and my refuge. But in my case, when it intersects with writing has always been the way I've recharged, even if it's just journaling. And so when you can find that thing, when you know what that thing is, that really kind of helps recharge your batteries. I think now is an especially important time to make space for that in your life.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I was just thinking about how this year I've really had to be a lot kinder to myself. And I don't think for 2020, we're getting rid of the phrase guilty pleasure. There's enough guilt. There's enough anxiety. If something makes you happy, my God, just glom onto it. Okay? Because I feel like, so this year I experienced something very kind of scary, which is for the first time, I really couldn't write. My debut novel came out this year, and it's a horrible year to debut. I couldn't go on book tour like I always dreamed about. I couldn't go to conventions. Things like this, through Zoom are nice and I get to see, but it's not the same as going to a convention and networking and having drinks with people and just relaxing and forming connections in person. And I was very, very disappointed. And then it was also hard to promote the book. And I don't know, I felt like my dream was kind of slipping through my fingers a little bit. And I took a blow. I took what I would call a psychic injury, if you will. And it literally, the inspiration, the creativity that I had always taken for granted just wasn't there. And I said, well, what do I do now? This is supposed to be my career. I can't write. What am I doing? So I had to learn how to really just allow myself to feel joy again and to enjoy things, whether that be like the corniest, cheesiest bodice ripper romance. Who cares? If it makes me happy and gets me writing again, I'm out it. Like I don't have that mindset of um anything being nothing is out of bounds really. If I'm not hurting anybody, I'm just, you know, there's no guilty pleasures. I'm just trying to get that engine started again.
Mm.
That's actually, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Well, I'm in the camp that had a hard time writing because there are days. Well, I had a joke with myself 2 months ago that, okay, I had a really productive writing day today. So 2 weeks again?
Yep. Yep.
But
See
I
you
had
again
to.
in 2 weeks. Notebook.
I know, right? And I have a lot of commissions right now that are sitting there, and sometimes I'm overwhelmed. Wow, executive dysfunction. Hello. But then I've also been learning how to channel that creativity into something else. And I'm not going to name like all the pandemic hobbies people take up, like cooking, although I have taken up cooking from time to time. But then this year, to relate it to some geekery, I had the opportunity to help out with FiaCon and to put together their fringe program along with my partner, Iori Kusano. And that was not writing, but it was getting together other people in the community who don't normally have voices because they don't live in the US or the UK. And now that we're all at home, we're all attending conventions, whereas before we couldn't. And it was a great opportunity to meet other people in the community and to realize that, oh, actually, I have this many friends now. Cool. So I think that's where my creativity went this year. And I think one way to keep up hope is to be open to other avenues that may or may not be related to writing if you haven't been able to do that.
For me, it's always like I always tell myself, okay, something is better than nothing. If I can't do 2,000 words, do 1,000. If I can't do 1,000, do 500, do 100, do 50, do any net gain of words, especially when it comes to writing, which is actually my work. It's, it's any number of words added is good word. You can figure it out later. It's just numerically watch, even if it only takes up one, that's fine. And that's okay. I think, like Nandi was saying about we're over guilty pleasures. I think we're also earning the idea of earning that pleasure. Pleasure just needs to be built in. And I might go as far to say you can't have hope without pleasure, or at least the promise of it. I think I have to think about that one to sort of cycle it through, but I think I might be onto something. But
I think you are.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I mean, the promise of joy in the future is as important as feeling it today, right?
And having faith that it's going to happen. I mean, anhedonia is awful. It's this blank grayness, and
I agree. Actually, it's funny watching TV shows, especially kids shows, because have brought me a lot of joy. I find that especially in genre fiction, I feel like a lot of recent stuff for adults has skewed very dark, and for kids of all ages. It tends to be a lot more positive and optimistic about the future, but also just straight up comedic. And that ability to sit and laugh with someone else on my couch or even on my own is really rejuvenating in a lot of ways. That, life gets to still be funny. Like, we can still laugh about things. And then the other awesome thing is, of course, you see people on TV unmasked, hanging out, having parties, and it's like, oh yeah, right, like this is what life is supposed to be like. And one day we're gonna get back to it.
Resonating with the chat, Mrs. Von Drack just said Scooby-Doo has been huge in the house lately. And Zoe says that YA books are really, that's why she loves reading those.
Yeah.
Do you have any other specific examples of like things from the geek community that embody this idea of hope, or
So
problem
I just
solver.
finished watching Kipo and the Wonder Beast with my daughter, and that's been super fun. And I would say that's it hits so many buttons for me in terms of thematics. It's kind of it's science fiction, but it's very borderline science fantasy fiction because for kids, and it's very respectful of different forms of life, different forms of intelligence. It's about friendship, much more than the bonds that we look at as adults. And it's just funny and fun, and it's got great music. Like it's the most amazing soundtrack I've heard for any show in a long time, barring a kids show. And for books, I find actually that middle grade books tend to be the funniest for me in terms of the characters and how goofy they all are. My favorite of the recent series is probably, and it's not that recent, I guess. It's been going for a while, but I've really been enjoying the Wings of Fire books that are all about dragon civilizations and dragon behavior, and the humans are kind of shunted aside as these little pesky scavengers. And it's super fun too.
For my part, I've really gotten into webtoons recently.
Wow.
Yes, and I've been specifically reading a lot of like Korean manhwa, and I like it because it has nothing to do with the pandemic, nothing to do with publishing, writing, nothing to do with anything that's causing me anxiety and stress right now. It's just purely this comic, and I can just look at the pretty pictures, and follow the story and the twists and turns and forget for a while. And that's actually one of the reasons I became a writer, is because I love the way that a good story can transport you. And I think it's therapeutic and healing, really. I think the effect lasts past once you're done reading. It just lingers in your subconscious and gives you this kind of sense of relief, which then allows you to breathe and to move and to continue to build and grow and live your life, rather than just this constant buzz of dread. There was a time, pretty recently actually, where every morning I would just wake up with this tightness in my chest and wonder, okay, here it is, where I'm in the pandemic again. Everything's so uncertain. I have no idea what even the next month of my life is going to look like, maybe even the next week, and I think having something like that to look forward to really helped alleviate that. So there's been the comics, gaming as well. I also have my own Twitch channel that I started this year, and working on that really was a good distraction as well. It was a nice project because it did two things. It made me feel productive, right? But again, it was also something that was completely unrelated to everything that was bringing me down. I haven't streamed for a little while, but I just got a new webcam literally today. It got delivered right before this panel, and I was like, yes, yes, everything is coming up, Nandi. So, so I'm using my new webcam, and I'm probably going to start streaming again now that I don't really have a good excuse not to. But that has also been fun. Just, I think, trying to find something that you enjoy that is so far removed from everything that's causing you dread and anxiety is a good strategy, in my experience.
Go ahead.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I mean, the whole point of, what Divya and what Nandi were saying about the fandom, what really jumps out at me is the idea that it's not passive. Geeks are always accused of being escapist. What, we can't deal with the real world? Yes, of course we can deal with the real world. We would just like a different version of it, please.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not being escapists. We're being engaged. We're just being engaged otherwise. And I think that's very important. Fandom really comes out for me in terms of when it makes people creative, even if it's like, commentary on rewatches or meta fanfic, of course, cosplay, making tiny little polymer figures of characters, which I just love looking at for some reason. But I think that's where fandom ends up being at its best, is when it makes us create and when it makes us engage. And also for me, season 2 of Hannibal, the fight between Hannibal and Jack Crawford, and I've watched that like 80 times since March, and that's just my happy place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good place. It's a good place.
Yeah, speaking of cosplay, we went ahead and cosplayed for Halloween since we got cheated out of cosplaying for any conventions in spring and summer. And it was really nice. I mean, it didn't matter. We didn't get to go show them off, other than taking pictures and sharing it with friends and family. But it was still refreshing and fun to just do something that, we would do any other year. And finally, just by October, I kind of threw my hands up and I was like, you know what? Like, we're in this now for a good long while. So let's just embrace it and go with it.
When I was little, in grade school, my mom would let me stay up until 10 o'clock, and then we'd watch nightly whatever was on TV, like Charmed or Gilmore Girls. And we have not been able to do that for the longest time. But since this pandemic started, we've been doing it again. And the shows we've done it with are so far a couple of K-dramas and Lucifer, which is what we're watching for the first time. I find that show hopeful because the depiction of the devil is, I don't know. I mean, I find it more eloquent and articulate about faith in a way that most other shows and reading material are not. And faith in some way is related to hope. So some other stuff. I read one book this year, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. And I really want to read lots and lots of new books. There's a whole pile in my room that is just waiting for me to pick up. But I think I needed an author that I've known for years and that I've trusted, whose story can get me through. And indeed, there were two storms actually in the Philippines recently, and the second one was not as bad as the first one, but it took out my electricity for 26 hours, and I finished Piranesi in the dark with this little battery operated book light. And even though it's not quite a happy story, it made me feel good and hopeful that maybe tomorrow I'll have electricity and internet. And one last gaming. No, actually, it's not the last one. Gaming has, if anyone is playing Genshin Impact out there, that is my current rabbit hole. And if you have no control over your spending, please don't play it. But otherwise, it's a gacha game, so it's nice to wake up every morning to be all, ooh, maybe today I'll gain this many Prima Gems so I can get this amazing character. And it's nice to be able to talk to friends from high school whom I haven't gamed with since high school. We've got this little group chat going, talking about it. And the last thing about hope, I have 10 dogs. They rely on me and my sister to, care for them. And it's not like having children, I'm sure, but they make me hopeful for the next day when I see their innocent little faces.
Oh.
I've been playing Stardew Valley and role-playing as the Ghost General from The Untamed. So, playing a little zombie dude who's been plunked into a farm and trying to grow stuff when he himself is dead that's been kind of good for me. It's like if I can just pile on enough levels of recursiveness here, I will separate from what's going on politically. I believe this. I believe myself. I believe in me.
Personally, in terms of gaming, I've been when I stream, I usually stream Super Mario Maker 2, and I think that's a modern version of like Zen. It just forces you to be so present, right? Because especially some of these levels people make, like they're so hard, and you have to and you really get narrow down and focus into trying to find out the trick to beating it. And that can give you a good hour or two of just relief from that buzzing anxiety in the back of your head. I also tend to play games that are just very pretty or make me feel like I'm outside, like I'd say my favorite game of all time right now is Breath of the Wild, because that game is gorgeous and you're on a horse, you're running around, you're doing things. And if you play it on a big screen TV, you can kind of trick your brain into thinking that you're outside having an adventure, not stuck in your studio apartment during a pandemic. And then the other one I've been playing recently is Persona 5, because that one is based in Tokyo. And so again, it kind of makes me feel like I'm, I don't know, somewhere else, anywhere else, but stuck in my apartment. So I love games like that. Here's a strange thing that happened. I have always hated horror, anything horror. And this year, I kind of love it. I've been watching streamers and YouTubers play horror games and their reactions to it, and just to feel something, And it's like the jump scares and the reactions to the jump scares. I don't know. It disrupts the spiral in my brain for a little bit.
It's fear and catharsis in a box.
Exactly.
It's literally in your laptop or in your phone. It's this packaged experience, and it's okay. It lives in the box, unlike all of that.
Yep. Captain Macbeth in the chat saying horror gives us the opportunity to channel the source's anxiety. That's exactly what it is. It's like it gives me a reason to be scared, and then my brain's like, oh, okay, that's everything's cool. Then that's what we're scared of. All right.
Oh, if I can recommend you some horror webtoons, I don't know if you have read Ghost Teller. There's 2 seasons, and it just finished last July. And then Melvina's Therapy. Sorry.
Ghost
Melvina's
Teller.
Therapy finished last year. It's a mind fuck. And the author has a new one called Grammary which is a haunted amusement park.
Ooh.
And what I love about these horror webtoons is that some of them actually have sound and some are animated. So,
ooh.
Yeah.
Webtoons is kind of something I might maybe want to get into someday. Like writing, maybe not the art, but writing the webtoon.
Would be really cool.
Funny watching the chat devolve the minute you mentioned Lucifer into just basically a huge yes, Tom Ellis for reasons. That's simply the way it is. I love that my list of things between awesome quotes and things to look up and things like that is fantastic here. The last question I have for the panel is how do we, let's say that we manage to struggle through, find hope, we're nourishing it. What are the pitfalls? What are the things we need to watch out for? How do we preserve it and protect it and guard it?
Fire. Let's just start there. No, I mean, more seriously, because that was actually the first thing that came to my mind. Hope is definitely a thing that needs to be defended. We were talking about how it's practice and how you have to put in the effort and you have to nurture it. If you put in the effort, if you protect it, if you grow it, then it deserves protection. I think that's something that maybe that's a word that we can all just shove in there. If you have hope, if you think you might have hope, I think you deserve to protect it, and it deserves to be protected. And, and once again, with fire if necessary, but hopefully, with communication before that happens, ideally.
I was going to say doom scrolling. Watch out for doom scrolling. Too much internet and social media, because the screen will just suck you in and not let go. And sometimes, there's such a negativity feedback there and it's hard to cut off, because I think we naturally are looking for that ray of light. And that's partly why we doom scroll. We're like, well, somebody tell me that this is all going to be okay, right? And so I think finding ways to shut that off and engage with the real world even if it's just, staring out your window, but going for a walk, reading a book, even watching TV is still better than sitting there and doom scrolling the endless, news and social media feedback cycle that we all tend to get trapped in. My tool of choice has been this app called Freedom. It's I don't remember if there's a free version, but I think the paid version is like $60 for life. And I'm like, it's worth every penny because you can schedule when you want it to free you and what you want it to free you from. So as a writer, I need to be able to get on my web browser, do research. However, I do not need to click over to my Facebook tab or my Google News or whatever, which I twitchily tend to do, right? Every time I pause in something else. So I have this app basically cut me off at certain times of day, especially in the morning, which is when I tend to sit with my breakfast and read news. So I'm like, okay, you know what? At 8:30, I need to go for a walk. And it will pop up this beautiful green screen with a butterfly on it and says, you are now free. And I'm like, yes, I am. Thank you. I should really go for a walk and put this down. And I'll do the same for chunks during my day when I should be writing or reading for Escape Pod or whatever it is that's healthier for me than staring at Twitter or Facebook or the news or even email sometimes, and just block all that out of my life. And I think it's one way to kind of avoid a anti-hope pitfall.
Well, again, with the boundaries, I'm going to add to that. You're going to need a very strong network of support around you, people who understand, without you talking about it too much, I guess, about hope and what you want to do with it, what kind of mood, atmosphere you're trying to keep up. I also recommend, once again, passing it forward. Like today, I saw the first hopeful feel-good news that I've seen in a long time, which is somebody paid a ride-sharing service to deliver so many burgers. And then the instructions were to give it to all the homeless people in that area. And oh my God, it feels so good. And then that person didn't even want to be named or interviewed on camera. They're like, just pay it forward. And that made me feel like, oh yeah, there are nice people in the world. And it's easy to forget that when you're just at the house, right? And there was something else I was going to mention, but I forgot. Right, related to making plans. So there are days where you got to make plans. Like, for example, my fiance and I talk about, maybe we can get married here or there, maybe we can get a house here or there. And there are some days where, conversely, I allow myself to feel hopeless because pandemic is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you use up hope too much, you can run out and you will burn out. So I don't know. It's weird, the idea, but in a way, I'm rationing it, or because if I don't actively do that, I'm gonna run into a day where everything is wrong and I just want to cry.
This year, I always thought of happiness and joy and hope as just a default state. And I always assumed there must be something very, very wrong with me that I don't feel that way. And this was even before the pandemic. And now I've really internalized the idea that happiness and joy and hope are deliberate actions. And I think this is going to be different for everyone personally, what you do and how you foster positive mental health. And this is why I said we really can't afford to have guilty pleasures right now. We're in survival mode. Once you're in a better place where we're not constantly being having our mental health bombarded and attacked, then maybe you can afford a little to be a bit more discerning about what you're consuming. But if something right now in survival mode, if something is making me happy, I utilize that to draw me out of a spiral. Yeah, but it's for me, especially lately, and I'd say I'm in a pretty good place lately. What's been working is structure. And if I go too long doing self-care, aka watching Netflix until Netflix asks if I'm still there,
It's so guilt-inducing. Why do you like that?
it is exactly.
I don't want you to do
And
that.
that's
That is
what
rude.
happens. I just have this anxiety, like, oh, I didn't do anything today, and then I wake up tomorrow with that tightness in my chest. So I'm finally at a place where I completely understand. Sometimes you're in a place where you cannot do anything. You wake up and you're like, nope, nothing's getting done today. I can tell. But that's when you have to slowly take those little steps to pull yourself out of that, so that you can be effective and feel good about yourself, So for me, it's been scheduling 30 minutes, doing what I call pain in the ass tasks. Like if it's something I really don't want to do, I have to do it in that 30 minutes. And then I get 30 minutes of freedom, like true freedom to do guilt-free pleasure. And then another 30 minutes doing something. And that's been really helping bolster my sense of self-esteem and self-worth. And then there's also what I eat. I realized I've been eating really crappily, and that has a big effect, I think, on your mental state as well. Hormones are a thing, and what you eat, I find personally for me, when I consume a lot of sugar and fried stuff, my anxiety tends to spike. And then the sugar crash is also no fun. So I've been being more mindful of that, and that's, I think, helping a lot. So it's going to be personal for everyone, but really pay attention to your mood. What brings it up? What brings it down? And then take deliberate action to do things that bring it up rather than bring it down. Oh, and then one more thing is don't compare yourself to other people. It's my debut book year. Of course, I fell into that rut. I've been comparing myself to people left, right, and center. And that, combined with doom scrolling, that's a 1-2 punch killer. That would really bring you down. So don't compare yourself to other people, and just do your best to be kind to yourself, and realize that we're all in survival mode right now, and it's okay to not be okay, as Gray's shirt says.
Yes.
Well,
And
oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Just a reminder for everyone who's got some mental health issues: book appointments with your therapist and take your meds.
Mhm.
No, it's interesting that you both everyone, we've been talking about time for stuff, and I was just thinking about what Vida was saying about hope running out, and I don't even know if, for me, sometimes if it's hope running out so much as despair and grief need their time too. It's maybe that's the thing with people who keep saying it'll be okay. I'm like, what are you basing that on? Have you not been reading the news? What is going on out there? And I think that's the balance between real hope and empty calories of platitudes that are spat at you by people from the street, sometimes literally. That's it. We are in a bad place. There's no getting around it. There's grief, there is despair, and if we try to ignore them, they will just eat us. They will come for us. And hope isn't supposed to fight them. I think, now that I think about it, I think hope is meant to sort of help us live with them.
Agreed.
It's hope isn't.
We need hope to cope.
Yeah, we're not going to find a vaccine with hope. That's going to take scientists much, much, much smarter than me. Hope is to help me get through this. We're not denying despair or grief. We're learning to live with it right now. We're not going to get rid of it. We're living with it. But yeah.
And I'll just echo what Nandi was saying, which is make sure you take care of those basics. Try to eat right. don't drink too much. We're all drinking too much, especially at the beginning of this pandemic. It's like you're home all the time. The alcohol cabinet is right there. It's not like you're at the office. You're not driving. Like, sure, I'll have that one little nightcap, whatever. Eat, sleep, exercise, right? Those really fundamental things that we ignore at our peril, I think, because they're hard to do sometimes, especially when you are feeling bad, which is when you need it the most. But it is sort of this big hill to climb, right? To cook a good meal, to buy healthy food, to get outside and get some fresh air and exercise, to go to bed on time, to turn off Netflix and not like one more episode till it's way, way too late. All of these things impact your neurochemistry, your physical health, your gut biota. Like, all of these things are one big interconnected system. And in order to be able to fuel your hope engines, you need to power your body, with the right stuff. And it can be one of the hardest things to do. But if you can manage it, it's also one of the most beneficial things to do, I think, in terms of taking care of your overall health, mental, physical, and otherwise.
Oh, and relational health too. If if you have a hard time figuring out like cleaning up your social circle, talk to somebody who's making you feel bad and figure out if you have a rather neutral topic that you're bringing up and they respond to you in a confrontational, dramatic way that's meant to get a rise out of you, that's probably an emotional vampire and you should stay clear of them.
So I don't drink. I'm just genuinely bad at it. So what I've resorted to is I've just let myself get incredibly weird this pandemic. Like, this is something that happens all the time and it's not just a way I live, but I'm like this close to dressing my cat in 18th century clothes. Like, I'm really flipping close to thinking that's a great idea and that people will love me for that and that my cat will love me for that. But I mean, this is the best time to get weird. The consequences for me dressing my cat in a bow tie have never been lower. There's like zero judgment on that unless it's coming through the screen. I can't tell, and I'm not gonna find out. But let yourself be weird. This is the time.
Let
for
yourself
it,
be weird.
Let yourself be. This is the time. I mean, especially in fandom, especially in geekdom. I mean, I can look at my cat and say, I think maybe you want to be a little fancy, huh? No, he doesn't want to be fancy, but that's what I'm going to tell myself to get myself through the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's hope, but it's kind of vaguely related. So I'll just let everyone have that.
That really resonated with people in chat. And
So
actually,
my cat needs a bow tie. So basically what you're doing is validating Ripley's need to have a bow tie is what you're telling me.
yeah, very much so. And
Yeah,
and I will say,
think about me and my cat.
Zay has been saying for a while that she wants the new catchphrase of Worldbuilders is "Worldbuilders is weird." That should be the way to do it. So, yeah, wow. This has been a fantastic start to our panels. Thank you all so much. This is definitely going to be one of those that we are going to come back to and recommend people listen to because there's been so much great things here and helpful things. I I also have to thank you. Pain in the ass tasks is now a category, going to be a category in my organization. It's called PETA tasks, and that's going to be it. That is the best categorization ever. Can you tell us? We have been putting your websites in the chat as things have been going on, but there's a lot of different ways for people to interact on the internet. Are there particular ways that you'd prefer people find you on the interwebs? Vida, can we start with you?
All right. My website is vidacruz.org, but I am active on Twitter as La Vie C'est Moi because I just wanted it in French. And I will probably put that in our Zoom chat in case that was hard to figure out. I'm also on Facebook, but I changed my name a few months ago because there was a scare in the Philippines where everybody had fake accounts. So, just trolls, right?
Let's see. Nghi, how about you?
My website is at nevo.com, and that's due for a revamp. And otherwise, I am Nevo Writing at Twitter and Instagram. It's mostly cats and snark all the way down, but sometimes I do post food, so we've got that going for us.
Nice. And Divya?
You can find me at my website, sbdivya.com, and you can also find my work at escapepod.org, which is a weekly science fiction podcast I co-edit with Mer Lafferty. For social media, I'm probably most public on Twitter as at Divya's Tweets. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, though I am less present, especially on Instagram. That's a newer thing for me.
Excellent. And Nandi, along with your Twitch channel.
Yes, I am all over the place. So my Twitch is Nandi's Story. It's I haven't been as active on there, but like I said, I just got this new webcam, so you'll probably see me start streaming again soon. My website is nanditaylor.com, where you can find my book, Given. It's a young adult fantasy romance. So if you're looking for that young adult escapism, hit me up. I am on Twitter under Nandi_Taylor. I'm also on Instagram at NandiTAuthor. And I'm planning to start a YouTube channel because I'm not social enough, apparently. I think that, but really, like we were saying, where you have these things that, you want to do as hobbies and projects. So I think it's going to be really fun. And I'm looking forward to learning video editing and just coming up with the most memey videos that I can make. And I hope to entertain people and also inspire people. So look out for that soon. But yeah, I am all over the internet right now.
Thank you so much. I would say we've been telling people for months now that we were going to try and give them something to look forward to, and you have all so delivered that. This has been fantastic. We are doing this as part of our fundraiser, which you can find out more about at worldbuilders.org. We also have an auction going on. We have more streaming things tonight. My co-director, I just promoted her. My assistant director, Zay, will be hosting a panel on Geeks Talk About Polyamory. And that'll also be on our Twitch channel as part of the World Builders After Dark series. So we hope to see everybody there. And tomorrow at 11 here, we will have a panel on NaNoWri mode. Now what? So we'll have more information on that. Thank you all again so much.
Thank
you. Everyone in the stream, thanks for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.